There's probably a lot of dirt. There's probably like quite a bit of dirt in parkour. Like there's probably some unhappy individuals.
So actually that's a bigger conversation is does DOMS count? It looks like he did it just fine, and then he gets up, runs a few steps, and just starts screaming in agony.
You need a little bit of drama, you know, to really bring sports to like another level sometimes. So I asked you the other day if you were aware of the Kendrick Lamar and Drake rap beef.
Yes, I'm loosely aware of it.
Loosely aware?
Loosely.
Okay. At the time of this recording, one of Drake's security officers was shot, which is really serious. I mean, it is. There's going to be some jokes out there about like whether or not he set it up, but I think it's related to. Let me rewind a bit, so I'll kind of catch you up to.
Whoa, this is getting
wow. So this is a parkour show, so we're not going to talk about this a lot, but it is current news. And at this time of this recording, the beef is still ongoing, but that was, I believe, a response to him using an AI-generated Tupac voice.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if you're not in the know, Drake made a beef track. What do they call them?
Diss track.
Diss track.
Yeah.
Not a beef track.
Yeah.
Chicken track. A diss track against Kendrick Lamar, and in it he used Snoop Dogg's AI generated voice and Tupac's generated voice, as well as his own voice. And so you're saying that this shooting was a result of using Tupac's.
That's what makes the most sense to me, because I think that would enrage.
Is this your
people?
Is this your like analysis, or is this like an analysis?
No, it's been said that that's if people are going to Drake's estate and doing like a drive-by shooting, that's probably why. But before that track came out, he started the like diss track back and forth, and there's been a bunch of them, and it's pretty wild. If you're a hip hop fan, this is like up until someone got shot, it was like, this is the best time to be a hip hop fan. This is amazing. So he put out a track in response to some other stuff that's been going on for a while, but he put out a track called Push-Ups. Okay. And in that track, he called out a bunch of different rappers, but mainly Kendrick was the feature. Kendrick did not respond. So 3 days later is when he put out the Tupac track. And it was actually, in terms of like warfare, this was like a genius move, because Tupac is West Coast from California. Kendrick is from California. And in the track, in Tupac's voice, he's saying like, are you going to call out this light-skinned Canadian guy? Are you going to call him a bitch for me? Are you going to... In Tupac's voice.
Right.
And I'm just thinking like, whoa, this is mean. This is like... Again, in terms of warfare, this was like a brilliant move. It's kind of like in 8 Mile when Eminem... On the final battle, he says all the bad stuff that he thinks the other guy is going to say about him, and then says, say something they don't know about me.
Yeah.
And so Drake was kind of doing this in Tupac's voice, kind of mocking Kendrick. So it was weird, but it was also like, it was weird in terms of like diss tracks, because this isn't something people do, but it's like using new technology. But it was also kind of brilliant. Kendrick finally came back the next week, which is when I actually started getting into it, with a track called Euphoria. Then he did like some sort of addendum on Instagram only with a track called 616, which had a bunch of different meanings to it. And then Drake put out a track called Family Matters, which kind of attacked like Kendrick's family, although didn't really tell us anything we don't know from like music that Kendrick's already put out. Kendrick an hour later dropped a track called Meet the Grams, and that's where it started getting like serious, and he's calling Drake a pedophile, and
he's claiming he has like a secret daughter.
Yes. And then there's another track the day after that came out called Not Like Us, which has gone very viral and is getting played like as like a club track, and it's actually a good. I mean, all of Kendrick's tracks are good, but that one especially, I think, really hit on like a popular level. And then earlier this week, someone did a drive-by shooting at Drake's house.
Dang, it's all serious. I very, very loosely follow. So I listened to some of the Kendrick tracks, and I listened to the AI generated Drake track,
which got taken down, and then like Tupac's estate, I think, is like suing Drake.
Makes sense
for it, yeah.
But I don't know. Is that really? I don't know. I don't know the law behind it, but it feels like it's like this new era of technology where there's going to be some gray lines, bit fuzzy there on what the legality of it is. But I didn't realize that somebody got shot in this whole situation.
Yeah. That's the newest.
The one thing and you're gonna probably disagree with me, but I find that diss tracks are always the worst of rappers' catalogs of music.
That's true in most cases.
They're never actually good listens. It's just like you're just like listening to it for the like, what are they gonna say about the other person? Not like you're listening to it like, dang, this is a fire song, you know?
Yeah. Not Like Us, I think, breaks that. The Kendrick track that's like more recent.
Yeah.
I also like. I think it's funny because what he did is he in the 3 that he put out. So actually 4, but Euphoria was kind of like this very like dense music take, which a lot of like Kendrick's recent album was that as well. And then you had Meet the Grams, which was just like dark.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm not going to listen to this with my homies. I might not even listen to this ever again. It's just dark. And then Not Like Us, which is like, oh, you can dance to this.
Yeah.
But some other like notable ones, like for beefs in the past, Jay-Z's Takeover and Nas's follow-up Ether are both really good tracks. And that's all they put out. And they were on albums. So they were parts of albums. But I think when it's like standalone tracks that come out, Eminem's Kill Shot, I would still listen to.
Yeah, Kill Shot. For me, that was like the one exception that was in my mind. But even then, it's still not his best work. It's like, it's just an annihilation of MGK.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I didn't ever think that we were just going to have a conversation about hip hop on a parkour.
It's big news right now. But it got me thinking of the topic we're going to get into today, which is around parkour beefs, and specifically getting into like battle format and things in parkour, which is like direct competition in parkour. Because otherwise, you're putting out, someone puts out a clip, another person puts out a clip, and they're not really competing with each other. But when we get into like a battle format, it's actually a direct competition. But before we get into that, this concept of like parkour beefs, specifically between like artists and athletes, I actually struggle to think of any that have ever existed, at least that are like made public. I can think of one example that I'm not going to name because it was never really made public. Yeah. And so like the players in that, I don't know if either would want people to know
about, like,
I think a lot, and I actually and now I'm thinking of another one where I'll just say Travis Verkey received a DM from someone about Kong gainers specifically, but again, it's like really kept quiet.
None of that is like really public information, or like you're not publicly aware of like, oh, there's beef between these two people. Parkour, but I think largely the parkour community tends to be pretty overtly supportive of one another. Mm-hmm. So for there to be public beefs, I think that's really actually pretty counter to the general culture of parkour.
Yep. And so I'm just trying to think of like why that is, because Not that there should be. It's like why don't we?
Yeah,
why don't we have more people hating each other? I think you had mentioned this too, that there's definitely beefs that occur. You said like at the organizational level.
Yeah. I think parkour beefs tend to be actually not at the individual level, but at the organizational level. Like when you have FIG coming out and trying to do parkour stuff, or like the whole WFPF thing, or Parkour Earth, and this whole like intertwined governmental like parkour like governance kind of battle that's happening, or like was really strongly happening the last 5 years or so.
This one is not athlete to athlete or artist to artist, but Kai Willis v. Adam Dunlap.
Yeah, but Adam Dunlap versus the world.
Yeah, basically.
That's the real. I mean, how many people? But yeah, I mean, Kai did a whole like dishes the dirt thing. Like Kai dishes the dirt, but he only did like one episode of it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's a bummer. Yeah, I'm assuming too. There's like there's probably a lot of dirt. There's probably like quite a bit of dirt in parkour. Like I was just kind of alluding to. Actual like artist to artist or athlete to athlete beefs, but just within, or not just like you're talking about like governance, but I think within like corporations or entities, because so many parkour groups or businesses, like even businesses like Storer, which I'm sure they're incorporated in some capacity. There's probably some dirt in there. There's probably some unhappy individuals, but I think because it's business, it doesn't go public, because if it goes public, then it's still like small business relatively, so like there wouldn't be like major lawsuits or anything like that, but I think it's just to protect people's interests. There's probably NDAs and things that get signed, so we don't hear about it.
Unless you're Project Parkour.
Oh, we heard about that one.
I heard about that whole business beef that went down. I never actually listened to the follow-up conversation. But did you?
I did.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the stuff that Max Ward said in his original coverage still stands. What they did in their defense is they just came up and said like, well, we have all these signatures, was a big part of it.
Oh, okay.
Like everyone was like consenting
agreed to do the things.
Yeah. And I kind of take that as like, even if the signatures are correctly linked to agreements, I still take it as like not everyone fully reads agreements. And so like you could be saying something verbally that doesn't
match what's on paper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it still could be kind of slimy there.
I also, my other takeaway, from it was that just at the end of the day, what they put forth was not a good product, and it was, if anything, it's like at best for them, they had bad advertising, and at worst there was some false promises.
I almost think they had good advertising because everybody knew about it.
Well, good advertising, but I say like false advertising.
Oh, right.
Because anyone that paid like really didn't get what was advertised, because what was advertised was the involvement of a bunch of
masterclass athletes,
most popular athletes being involved. Yeah,
and that didn't end up panning out. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I feel like actually there was more beef back in the earlier days, like UF, Urban Free Flow, and like the whole Easy era of like there was like the beef between like the athletes and him.
Yeah,
like remember like the athletes all like withdrew and like very publicly like we're no longer part of Urban Free Flow. We're doing our own thing. That's actually where the birth of Storm Freerun was, in the wake of UF imploding. And actually just like in that era, there was a lot of like land grabbing, like attempts by organizations. It's like, oh, we're going to be the parkour teaching business, or we're going to do the competitions, or the goal was to just try to do everything with all these different organizations. And some of them were doing a lot, and then fizzled quite a bit, and now like we're left with like the ones that continued or new organizations.
Yeah. I also think that forums in that era, like when people used parkour.net, there was a lot more open disagreement and arguments, like what turned into arguments, turned into heated arguments, which could be, thought of as beef between practitioners.
Yeah, but it's interesting though, because there was a lot of open dialogue happening during the forum eras, because and I say eras because I came into parkour after parkour.net was already like done, and so but I was still able to access it, and I was able to read through a lot of the information that was being posted on parkour.net for a short period of time before it eventually just kind of evaporated from the internet. But my main forum was American Parkour. And so that's where I was most heavily posting. And then I know you were on this one, but Parkour North America, which was a smaller forum. But, and that was actually my first exposure to you. Okay, I'm gonna share this.
I said some mean stuff.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily. But there was like somebody was talking about, like, oh, well, like you got to make sure you're doing proper training or whatever. And you were like, yes, please tell me what this proper training is. This is so early on, right? And it's like, what is proper training and for parkour? And there's no such thing. It's just everybody's making it up.
Yeah.
So, and I think nowadays there's maybe a closer idea of what proper training might be, but even then it's still like, what is proper training? Like, is proper training doing new style, like the contemporary style? Is proper training doing old school style? Is proper training making sure you lift weights? Is proper training making sure you drill your precisions? Nobody knows. Parkour is so free. It's freedom of movement.
Yeah, I think in those days I had a lot of, say, like insecure takes. Like if I think about like why I said things, it was like, oh, this was like envy driven or whatever. Yeah, I was in my 20s.
Yeah,
it's how it is. So not a whole lot of, particularly in recent days, and I think like there were smaller beefs and hate in between individuals back in that day, but parkour has kind of moved on from that, and particularly now, I talked about this with Olivier, that like we're in this really accepted, like almost like everything is accepted, everything is good. Like if you post something, you only get likes, but also like the media changed, right? Like they removed dislike buttons and things like that, right? So it's not even like a unique to parkour thing, but because so much of all of parkour is shared digitally, the platforms pretty much encourage only positive takes.
Right.
At least between practitioners. I mean, you still get some like negative comments but those are usually from outsiders though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Outsiders. People generally in the parkour community are mostly accepting and inclusive, and I mean all events that happen are basically they're trying to move towards inclusivity. So yeah, it feels like we're in an era where there's really not really open criticism or open beefs that happen between people, although I'm sure it does happen. I'm sure there's people who are openly or not openly behind closed doors, like upset with other people's behavior.
Yeah. So beefs is like, it really is like a hip hop term.
Yeah.
Like it really is. That's, if you were to, and I haven't looked it up, but I'm quite certain that the term and how we use the term came from hip hop. And so did battle formats. Like we're talking about like rap beefs. Well, before there were like beefs in rap, it was because of like where you would hear disses would be at rap battles, and then you also have like b-boy battles, and now we have parkour battles, right? And I remember when we used battle formats, if we think way back to NAPC 1,
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember how it came about?
2013. How we decided to do it. I have an idea. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So, do you know the athlete Bait?
Yes.
Remember Bait?
Yeah. Bite, I think is how it's pronounced. Yes.
Yeah.
But he did the big like downward dive rolls that were most definitely hazardous to his
Did he also
health.
win? Did he also win like Sickest Trick one year?
He did
on
at
Red Motion.
Yeah.
So that's how you can find him. Anyways, we were watching a clip he had at a competition.
Yeah.
And when he was doing some moves, he was kind of finishing in these poses that looked like he was battling with the other competitor. And we actually never got confirmation onto whether or not this was actually the format or if he was just like showboating.
That's exactly what I remembered. It was like a Russian competition where our impression of watching like the clip was like, oh, this is like a one-on-one battle. So like this is kind of a cool way to do style. We can compare people, we can compare, like, it's easier to determine who's a winner based on relative comparison. So that's what we should use for our style format.
Yeah. And yeah, it just made sense at the time because there was like a problem already with what people were seeing with Red Bull and the scoring. And we're like, well, we want to have like a freestyle competition, but we don't want to tackle this whole like rubric of scoring. And so an easy way to do it is battles. But at the time, we also didn't think that people would be into the 1v1 scenario. We thought that parkour wasn't ready for that, that it would be too competitive. And so we did teams. We did 2v2.
Yeah,
we thought it would be more
fun. I think, just like in general, like the whole like the battle format was just, we wanted to include style, but we didn't have a really clear idea of how to do it, and so we were like, what would be fun is just like have like teams of two go against each other. So I don't think it was intended to be a very serious competition.
No. It got taken serious one time.
Yeah.
There's you might be able to find still a clip of Corey DeMeyers like throwing his hands up at some judges when he and Jesse didn't make it through. Good moment.
Quality.
Perhaps justified. I don't know.
It may have been. It may have been justified. Yeah, that was a weird year.
Yeah, but we fast forward to recent years where now you have Kings of the Concrete, which is a direct 1v1 competition. Before that, there was, I'm trying to think of the name, and everyone gets upset when I can't think of the names of things on STS, but I just remembered there was an online battle. What do you remember what it was called? Where you could call people out.
Cali battles or something like that?
Yeah, it was definitely based in California, and then it kind of just started to spread.
Yeah. It was it was like a Facebook group, right? It was a Facebook group where you could call people out and battle them, and then it was like poll based. So like the athlete, I don't know if it was an actual poll or if it was likes.
I think it was likes, yeah.
Yeah, so like the athlete, the line that got the most likes won the battle. And that was, Cali. I think it was Cali Battles. I think was the name.
I think that was Duels.
Cali Duels. Yeah, that's what it was. Cali Duels.
Was that? Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty certain it was Cali Duels.
Comment if we're correct.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and Kings of the Concrete is not the only one doing it now. Like even Gizmo.
Yep.
Gizmo is a battle format. And in the years after, like, we did our battle format, Apex did theirs for their international Apex International event. But like it was largely because of that one Russian competition that may or may not have actually been a battle. We don't know for certain. That kind of influenced it. But it was really like driven by like the b-boy culture of battle format.
Yeah. It again, at the time it was just easier to judge than like I said, a rubric. We've since moved on to just formal judging.
Well, so not only b-boys, but like tricking battles is a thing, and tricking actually has a pretty close relationship with parkour, and so it was very, it was a pretty big tie-in, I think.
So part of what I'm thinking of with battles in parkour, and why I actually don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think it actually makes sense for tricking, and part of it is because either mimicking, copying, or straight out biting is a big part of battles in hip hop, so in rap and in breakdancing, but also in tricking. And so the example I'd give is in a rap battle, if I know the kinds of rhymes you make, I can use that in my rhymes to make fun of you. Like your skill level is so low that I can mimic it and then one-up it. And you can do that in breaking. If a certain person has like a certain set they do or certain moves, while that person's doing it, I can be like trying to hit the beats at the same time. I can be trying to like do the poses they're gonna do, again, to like make fun of them as I'm predicting what they're about to do.
Yeah.
And the same thing can happen in tricking because there's only so many moves and it's flat ground, so it's really easy to do that. I have not seen this in parkour yet, and I think we're missing out on a big part of like what makes a battle fun and entertaining, but also sometimes personal, right? And I think parkour is not really ready for it, but I can't recall a time, and I think it would be great if someone did, where someone kind of like took someone's line and like either like one-upped it or did something while they're performing it.
Yeah, so it's really interesting you bring this up because, yeah, parkour battles, the people who are battling hug each other at the end of it.
I mean, that happens in other stuff too, but yeah, it happens in the other things I've listed,
really?
but not all the time, because sometimes it's heated, right?
It's heated, yeah. But it's never heated in parkour, is I guess what I'm saying.
No.
Because there's never like a beef around like the battle. It's just like, oh, I'm just going to do my best and try to like, win the judges over.
Well, also in Kings of the Concrete, the first, if you go out second, you can't watch the first person, which I think is a mistake.
Right.
If we're trying to make it like a battle, because otherwise this is just like I think the reason they do it is if the first person messes up, then
the second person can do an easier line. And
win. So they still have to go hard. But yeah, I think that's a mistake. I think you should be able to watch.
That's the thing with parkour though, is for the battle formats we have, it's basically showcase and then showcase, whereas often in all these other disciplines, you'll have like a back and forth and a back and forth.
Yeah.
So it's not like with a rap battle, you're not only going once and then like, okay, I hope I won. It's like you get a chance to respond.
Yeah. There was a bit of this in Cali duels too. So in Cali duels, someone would put out a line and call someone out, and sometimes the person that got called out would do like similar moves, like they something in the same realm, which I think is really cool because now you're speaking the same language and it's easier to judge, right? Whereas if you're just doing like completely different skill sets, then how do you judge it? Like if I were to submit a line on Cali duels, there would be certain moves like within my wheelhouse that I would put not flips that I would put in my line, and if I'm calling someone out on it, I would call someone out who could do a similar line, and it would be their job to try to do something that was in the same realm but better.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but like with parkour lines, you don't get a chance to respond to another person's line. Although I think Apex International, there was kind of like a back and forth.
Well, we did too.
Yes, that's right.
The second NEPC, there was like you got to watch. There was a point NEPC 1. You and Tyson Checa were like a team, right?
Yeah.
And I think part of it is like you watch. There was some of this happen.
I competed in style, everybody. I was a OG style competitor. You don't even realize.
but I think part of it too is like I remember there was like a big dive roll you did.
Yeah.
And like part of it is like you're seeing what the other team is coming up with, or that your competitors are coming up with, and there was some improvisation, because that wasn't like really like we weren't doing lines. It was like more of it's just your turn. You know, if you have a combo or a line, do it.
Yeah.
But you could also do like single tricks.
Yeah.
And there were rounds.
And that happened. And like Joey, like he did like a double back, and he's like, yeah. And he goes and does something else, and it definitely wasn't lines. It was just like a showcase of like, here, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. But no, with our battle though, it wasn't. I don't think it was like a chance to respond, like because it was 2-on-2. It was like one person from this team, one person from the other team, the other person from the first team, the other person from the second team, and that was the end of the battle.
Right. Yeah.
But if it was 1v1 and it was like first person, second person, back to first person, back to second person, then that's like at least a chance to respond.
Yeah.
Which doesn't usually happen with battle format for parkour.
Yeah. I would really like to see this.
Yeah.
I don't know, again, if it would sit super well with people, because it gets so much more competitive, and like I said, it can be like personal. Like imagine you're up against Ellis Torhall, and it's like he's responding, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, what do? You know? And he does have things in his repertoire that he doesn't, or there are things that aren't, I guess, practiced by him. Like we've talked about some of like the new style and off-axis tricks that you don't really see from him. But if you don't have those and you're going up against Ellis Torhall, and I think this is why people are afraid to just go into competitions with him to begin with, is like, yeah, he can do everything else.
Yeah.
And he can do things that only he can do.
Yeah. So one of the problems with like the response thing in parkour is then the athletes have to prepare so many things to do.
Yeah. Well, then it shouldn't be like lines.
Well, yeah.
It should just be like singles and combos. Like I would just, and again, I think give them time. Like if Kings of the Concrete wanted to take on this like sort of vision of like having responses, I think you give everybody the practice time so they can come up with lines, they can come up with single tricks, they can come up with whatever they want. Because that's a big part of like tricking battles and even breakdancing too, is like sometimes someone will come out and do something short.
Yeah, they'll
and
just
be like,
do
that's
like a
enough.
one-off. Yeah,
It's like the mic drop moment. It's like, I'm just going to do this. Done.
Yeah.
And I think you could see that, and I think it would be very interesting.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, more entertaining.
Could be. Yeah. Very much could be. Yeah, so this whole thing of like biting and like taking the same thing, this kind of happened at SPL1.
Okay, go.
So I don't know the social dynamics of the situation, but there were two male athletes in style that did the same combo. Do you remember?
Oh, sorry, you said SPL1. I do remember. Yes.
Okay.
Do you don't want to name them?
Yeah, I'll name them.
Okay.
So Kaylin Chan and Ed Scott, they both did like a lache to Kong Gainer.
Yeah.
And then
But Kong Gainer and
lache, Kong Gainer, and then palm flip.
So here's what the difference
podcast.
was.
Yeah.
I believe Kaylin did a popcast.
Yeah.
And I believe Ed basically like lands his Kong Gainer, and then it's a slow plyo, but like didn't move his feet, and then did
palm flip. Right.
Which to me was like the harder combo, because he couldn't take that extra step to get set.
Joey did actually a really good analysis on this, because he was also saying that Ed's Kong Gainer was more slanted, whereas Kaylin's was like straighter. So you could argue that Kaylin's is a little bit more difficult. Yeah. But anyway, I think what actually happened is during practice, like Ed had it planned first, and then Kaylin came up and came up to do it.
That's exactly what happened.
So there may have been some beef between.
Ed was upset, and I think like rightfully so, because this is something that we don't do. You know, at least in competition. Like if you're at a jam, that's totally normal. Hey, let's both do the lache and then like Kong Gainer out of it. Oh, sick! We both did it. High fives. You know, no one cares. But in a competition, it's definitely frowned upon, I guess. But
Yeah.
it almost shouldn't be. And I think Ed did so you were saying that it comes down to like who did the con gainer better. And then my initial take on it, and I would have to go back and watch to see that assessment, was that Ed did the harder combo in the end.
I don't know. I don't remember, honestly.
Yeah.
Like which one actually was better, but I do remember Joey did an analysis on it, and I thought his analysis was interesting. But yeah, it's like it's one of those things. It was actually unfortunate for Ed because I mean he still ended up winning that year, but I believe he went after Kalen, so it was like this weird thing for judges to see Kalen do this line or this combo, and then Ed having to do it after they already saw somebody do it, and it was not exactly the same combo, but pretty much the same combo. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's like, how do you prevent that?
Well, the thing is actually, and we're talking about this battle format, is I mean I'm talking about it as like I would actually like to see more of that, because I think there's just more. There's more. You need a little bit of drama, you know, to really bring sports to like another level sometimes. That's personally how I feel about it. And at the end of the day, you know, anytime you think of rivalries in sports, there usually is like a show of respect eventually. And you know, it's left on the playing field. So, but I think it does just add so much more intrigue when you have those stories and rivalries. So I actually think that the way we're about to do, well, we started doing with the competition in Montreal, but the way we're going to be doing combo round actually facilitates this more.
Okay.
Because of some of the restrictions that we're putting on the round now, where it's like both athletes have to do a combo in the same zone, whereas that wasn't the case at SPL1.
Correct.
They could do it wherever they wanted to. And so because they're going to be restricted to zones now, well, there's only so many ideas. So it's actually going to be more likely that you're going to
see a little bit of repeat
someone's idea. But I think because we have them I don't know, we might have to change practice so they can't practice together.
Yeah.
Because it would also be on someone's, I guess, responsibility as an athlete. If someone goes out first and does what you had planned, you need to do it better, or you need to add like some sort of wrinkle to it.
Yeah.
To really make yourself stand out. And I think that could be really cool.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens this year with the way it plays out. It's interesting because like let's tie this into the greater culture of parkour. There's not really a culture of copying being a problem, right? Yeah. Whereas it is very much a problem in other sports. So like the really the main example being like skateboarding. So like when you go to a spot that people have skated before, your goal is to do something brand new that's never done at the spot. And it's actually not cool if you do something that somebody else has already done.
Yeah, I think this was only first mentioned to me like a year or two ago. I didn't know that this was a big part of like skate culture. I actually think we mentioned him on the podcast recently, but Christopher and his dad, Mike, I think Mike was talking to me about it. He was saying like, you're not allowed to do that. I can't remember if it was at like a session or something. Like, oh, what's this person going to do? Because you can't do what someone else did. And I was like, oh, no, that's not a thing in parkour. Like, yeah, I did this jump before. People are allowed to do it.
Yeah. But there is like a culture of like one-upping, which is cool. But there's definitely not a culture of like, this has already been done, don't do it again. Or it's like you can still do it. It's just a matter of like you're not supposed to like film it and put it in a part, and like it's not supposed to be highlighted as this cool thing that you did first, or not, you didn't do first because you did it like after somebody else did it.
It's interesting though, because do you think if you made a parkour video and a lot of the clips were things that other people had already done, probably wouldn't be like viewed very well? If that was it actually reminds me of when I wasn't as close to former Vancouver athlete Corey Methvin. So I was doing Sunday sessions a long time ago, and he would turn up to these sessions, and this is before he wasn't very good, right? Like he wasn't a standout athlete yet, and a bunch of like the main figures in the Vancouver scene would be hitting some challenges, right? And I don't think we would ever see him do them on the day. He would maybe eventually get them, so he was picking it up. But then he did this more than once, where he would go out the week after and make a video of all the challenges that we had basically set at the jam, and then just release the video. And that did not sit well with anyone. Yeah. I think everyone was hating on him as, being like a biter. Like, you don't do that. You don't just show up to the jam and see what all the challenges everyone's setting, and then go out and make a video with them. That's without talking to anyone, like that's or mentioning like, thanks for the ideas, guys. So I do think there's like some unwritten or
I mean that's a bit unusual behavior. Like, I don't think that's normal behavior amongst parkour people to do. And also, parkour was smaller back then, so it's like when somebody's putting a parkour video out, you take more notice in general. Plus, it would if that was nowadays, it would be on Instagram.
Yeah, I also think there's like some like nobility that like I would certainly want to practice. So an example, say one of the dive holes you did for your project. If I managed to go and get one of those done, if I like went out and went to the spot and I'm like, oh yeah, Tom did this, and it look at it and like, I think I might be able to work up to this today, and I did it. If I posted it, I would say I would have a mention. I would have a mention of you that you did.
But that's
this
like that's a really specialized move, and it's like very specific. But I feel like if it's just like a jump or like not even like a particular. No, I know, but like it. Yeah, I agree. It depends. Like if it's not a particularly standout jump, it's like oh, this is just a rail precision or something like that. Like I think people are allowed to do that without posting in reference to the person who did it first.
Yeah. Well, it depends, I guess. I think where it depends is if the person who did it first is like the only one for a period of time, and it like was not an NBD, not been done. Like if everyone's at a jam and everyone's doing the jump, and like 5 clips come out that day, and like everyone did it, or like in succession, that I don't think it's big deal. But if it's like something that was either looked at or is at a unique spot where no one ever considered it before, and like someone does it, and then you go and do the exact same, like after watching the clip, you're like, oh, I gotta go there and do it now. I think there should be a mention.
Interesting.
I think you would. I think you would if this.
No. I am seeing like what you're saying, and I understand the. I think there may actually be some unwritten rule here that maybe I was downplaying before.
Yeah, I don't think it's a rule, but I think you would I think you would see it as the right thing to do. You would probably feel weird not mentioning the other person.
I'm trying to think of like other scenarios where this like has happened or maybe hasn't happened. Like there's been a couple people since Kong fronted IMAX 1. Been a couple people after the fact who have done it as well. And I'm trying to think of like if they actually referenced him, like if they or like actually this is a very current example. if Jan Schlappen doing the Leon 25, did he mention Dom in the post?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Or is it kind of just like we already know Dom did it?
See,
so
now we gotta look this up.
now we have to look it up.
Well, and that is a good example. Is Jan.
But yeah, I don't know if it's like in that scenario, is it important to recognize Dom as the one who did it first?
I mean, Dom in capital letters here says "proud of you." So proud of you. No, it doesn't look like he was tagged or mentioned.
Okay.
But it's funny because he said I succeeded my biggest dream, and it's like, well, in that case, it's kind of funny because was it your biggest dream or was it Dom's dream? And that
eventually became your dream too. Yeah, but here's the thing, Dom didn't actually do it.
Oh, because he hurt himself?
Yeah. So actually, that's a bigger conversation. Is does Dom's count? It looks like he did it just fine, and then he gets up, runs a few steps, and starts screaming in agony.
Yeah.
But Jan apparently did it without any issue.
What's the rule is there a rule in skating for whether or not something counts if you hurt yourself? If you stay on the board, is it good?
Roll away, it counts.
Yeah. Okay, then I guess he did it.
Yeah, I guess Dom rolled away. Yeah. But he couldn't walk back up the stairs. So I don't know if it counts. Dom, if you're listening to this, let us know. What do you think? Does it count?
Dom also strikes me as a pretty selfless person in that regard too. Yeah. So I don't think he cares either way too much.
If it counts or not?
If it counts, and if Jan, the whole everything.
Oh, yeah. Well, but here's the thing. Everyone knows Dom did it. You know? And so it's in this scenario, does Jan not tagging or referencing Dom at all really matter? Because everyone knows that he's the second one to send it. Whereas, I don't know, some random rail pre here in Vancouver that somebody did once and then somebody else did 2 years later is that's not maybe you should kind of just reference the person who did it the first time, or I don't know.
I guess it would be weird. Okay, so we'll use that as an example. I find a new rail pre, it's a sizable one, it's hard to do, I managed to stick it, managed to get a clip, post it, and then 2 days later someone else goes and does it, posts it, and there's no mention or whatever.
Yeah.
That might be, I don't know. Depends.
There's no
I guess I'm just soft like that.
It's interesting because in skateboarding there's some pretty hard unwritten rules.
Yeah.
But they're hard rules even though they're unwritten. Whereas in parkour it feels like there's some gray area and that we're not really sure as a culture what's appropriate or not.
I'm thinking of the example too where it's it depends who. Depends who, just there's so many layers to it. Did I feel attacked? There's so many layers to it. But speaking of skating, you were there's a recent sort of reference to this that you had pulled up.
Yeah, so it's not super recent, but it's fairly recent, within maybe the last year. So there's two skaters, both with fairly unconventional styles. Andy Anderson, who is a local from White Rock, White Rock, BC.
Basically Vancouver for people that
basically don't know. Vancouver, yeah. Very, very, very south. Hugging the border, basically. And so Ricky Glazer, who is Australian, but he lives in California. And actually, I think Andy now lives in California. So this really interesting thing came up where Ricky Glazer posts himself doing this really, really long dark slide. A dark slide is when you flip the board over onto basically the grip tape, and it's like a board slide where the board is perpendicular to the surface you're sliding on, and you're basically riding a board that's upside down, which shouldn't really work and doesn't work for most people. It's a really difficult, crazy trick. But anyway, he does this really long one down this curb, and dismounts and lands it and skates away. And then, I don't know, maybe a day later, Andy Anderson posts the same exact trick on the same exact spot, and it was filmed better, and he was going to use that clip in a part that he was filming, but he posted on Instagram, and basically the context is, hey, so there's this whole unwritten rule in skateboarding where you're not supposed to do the same trick on the same spot because the person who does it first kind of owns it. And so actually one of the ways you can kind of claim the trick is get like a photo of the trick you're doing published in a magazine like Thrasher or something. And so then skaters will see that you did this trick on this spot, so you've claimed it and you're not supposed to go and do that same trick. So he didn't actually get a photo published or anything like that of him doing this dark slide. So he's like, yeah, so I now, based on this unwritten rule in skateboarding, I am not allowed to post this or include this trick in my video part. And he actually asked Ricky if he could post it. Which is wild because it's like Andy actually did it first. Ricky did it second, but Andy was holding on to it and didn't release it until Ricky did it and was like, hey, Ricky, am I allowed to post this, me doing the same dark slide? Because you technically have claim over it because you released it first. Which is crazy to me because it's this really like actual, what I find really cool about it is this really high level of respect between skaters of like, oh, this person did this trick on this spot. I am not allowed to do it because out of respect for this person to like release their part.
Is it they're not allowed to do it, or they're not allowed to have it as like exist, like they're not allowed to film it essentially?
I think it's a little bit more like I can't include this in my skate part because it's already been done by somebody else. But I think there's also a layer of like, well, if you're going to like spend the time to like work up to this trick, maybe don't if somebody else has done the same exact trick. Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of the example of the Leon 25, which you probably know the skater that actually like dropped it. Okay. Did he do a trick, or is it just like...
he just ollied it.
Okay. So I'm thinking of that as like, okay, that's very special because it's this massive stair set and no one else is going to want to try it. And if they do, now they're not going to because Jaws already did it. But like there's stair sets that are much smaller that a lot of skaters could ollie. And I imagine that on a regular like skate sesh that they're going to do it. Even it's not going to be like, I can't ollie down those three stairs because someone else did it. So there's got to be like a line somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's like, like I think there's like a line of like how advanced is it? Because if you're like coming up in skating and you're like just like kind of like learning stuff, like of course you're gonna end up doing the same stuff people have already done on the spots.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if the line has more to do with, again, if it's like filmed.
Probably.
Because you were talking about like Andy Anderson, he asked permission to post it. Because they'd both already done it, and I wonder if like someone would be less likely to do something if it's already been done. But if they're just like, oh, I'm just going to do it just because it looked fun or challenging, but I'm not going to like film it, if that's allowed.
Yeah, but I guess if it's at high enough level, it's like, why at that point would you do it if it wasn't for your video part? Because it's such a big part of the culture of like, I'm going to do this hard, potentially sketchy or risky trick, and I'm going to probably do it 20 or 30 times before I can actually roll away from it.
That's probably a huge part of it too, is there's so much like skill and sometimes even seems like luck involved with landing a lot of feats or tricks in skating. Whereas like in parkour, usually what, like a stick, it's actually why like I don't think Stora was mentioning that they feel like sticks are going out of favor, and I feel like this is something that should be talked about is like, why do we stick things and stuff? And I actually think it's probably the thing that relates us the most to skating, is because we have this culturally clearly defined thing of what counts and doesn't. And so if we keep sticks as an important part of the culture, then we do get to have this line of where something counts or doesn't count, assuming the challenge involves a stick.
Well, in freestyle, like landing with your hands doesn't usually count. So like staying on your feet counts. That's as landed. Same thing with tricking.
Yeah. It makes me think of, we go back to like IMAX 1, and we think about Kai Willis doing like the Kong pre, but not sticking it, right? Just overshoot Kong pre, and then years later, Marcio sticks it.
Arthur did it first, but asterisk.
Because mats and stuff?
Mats. Yeah. They had mats.
So, but anyway, so you have an athlete come in and stick it. And so it's interesting because when Kai did it, I guess there was no thought that it was like possible to stick. Like the skill and the mental fortitude had not reached that point. It was already such a breakthrough just to Kong the gap. Yeah. So that's like another kind of weird thing with parkour, where sticking something adds so much to, like, we'll call that a trick just for, skaters do. Skaters call Kong's tricks. But we'll say it's a trick.
It's not a trick, Rene.
It makes it so much more of a trick if you do stick it. Whereas it's just kind of like a send if you just do it. Like, I don't know if Kai did it more than once that day. Do you know what I mean? Whereas like Marcio, and I'm assuming Arthur, had to do it so many times in order to stick it. And again, it makes it more like skating, it makes it more of a trick, it makes it more like something that you put your stamp on. Or I'm just talking out my butt right now. I don't know what I meant to.
Well, it's like, okay, so it's been stuck, right? The concrete has been stuck.
Yeah.
If somebody else goes back and sticks it again, like, is that wrong of them?
It's not wrong, but I also think that there's less motivation to do it.
Because it's already been unlocked.
Yeah. So, because like people know, like, oh, if I do it, they're definitely, and I think that's one where like they would maybe tag Marcio or something, and not just do it and post it. I don't know.
Yeah, like, so with the Leon 25 example so Jaws did the ollie down the stairs. So for another skater to be able to do that gap, they have to do something different than an ollie.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's happening with IMAX 1 though, right? Like you have people trying to do other kinds of vaults.
Yeah, but it's interesting because it's not really driven necessarily by the unwritten rule of don't copy others. It's more driven by the goal of progression and to leave your mark. Yeah. Right? It's like, like people are doing other vaults there. It's like, oh, like, when's somebody going to do the hurdle pre?
Yeah. So I guess we don't have a problem with it so much because, okay, so like if you go Kong pre IMAX 2. Yeah. People are going to say, good for you, Tom. Yeah. But that's as far as it goes. Like
because it's not an accomplishment. It's not like it's everybody can do that.
Yeah. You're not the legend who did, I don't even know who did it first. Yeah. Which
probably Danny.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of sucks for whoever did it first because it's not.
They're not known for it.
And it should be because it's a pretty iconic, like it took a while for people to start doing other things. Yeah. It was Kong pre and double Kong and stuff was like kind of like where that stayed for a bit. Yeah. Probably Danny.
And then dive front. Pip is known for the dive front.
Yeah.
He was the first one to do dive front across the IMAX 2 gap. Yeah. But then like a bunch of other people did it. But they often were dive fronting it and then like cart full. They were like tacking on to the challenge by like one-upping it a little bit, right? But in my mind, Pip gets like the credit for being the first. He owns the dive front there. Yeah. So like if anybody else does a dive front, it's like an ode to Pip.
So there's two other things that I think about when I think about copying or biting in parkour, in particular as it refers to videos. This is actually something that happened to Gio Bartolucci for his video Crooked Man.
Yeah.
So he put out a behind the scenes or an explainer of Crooked Man, and in it he was talking about there's a Kong gap that he did. So Kong pre, not stuck, but the Kong pre overshoot. And at the time, no one had done it, and he'd looked at it for a long time, and then he did it, and then he saved it. But before he put out his video, someone else did it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he mentions it. He said someone else did it, and he's like this. And he's a guy who's like very into skate culture,
Yeah.
so he kind of knows how this is. But he still put it in his video,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it kind of I think in the video where he's talking about it, he just kind of smiles and just says it is what it is, because it's the hard part about saving clips.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
This actually reminds me of when you were filming Ascension 2.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the final ascent.
Yeah, I was
with
thinking about bringing
the
it
really
up.
exposed dyno.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. So you because I remember around the time like I would say like, is it true or false? You wanted to be the first person to do it.
100%. Yeah, 100%. It was very much a like this will be like lifetime achievement.
Mm-hmm.
I can look back on this and be like, I was the first person, potentially only person to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe somebody in the future will go back and do it. But I wonder if there's even an incentive to do it now because, it's been done already. And so
someone would have to be really into the style of like really into ascending.
Yeah.
And I think, like speaking to that, like Nathan Muller,
Yeah.
I would say could probably train to do it.
Oh, definitely.
Right?
Definitely could.
But
He'd probably do it way better than me too.
But I also think he feels very strongly about copying. And like
Yeah,
strongly in terms of like he doesn't want to.
I don't think he wants to do any of the same ones that I did. So, largely because he wants to do his own. But it is cool because like there's one climb that I've always thought like because architecturally it's really interesting. I've always thought would be really cool as a climb. And when I was there with him like last month or 2 months ago, he actually like worked through it and he's like, I'm going to put this on my list to do. And it was really cool to see somebody else do something that I've been looking at for a long time, but hadn't quite figured out how to do it. But anyway, so the final ascent in Ascension 2, that I actually was at UBC with a bunch of good athletes. And I was taking them around like tour, here, let's go to this spot, let's go to this spot. And we're going, I'm like, okay, where should we go next? And my wife Caroline was with us and she was like, isn't this like the parking garage? And I was like, yep, but we're not stopping there because I didn't want anybody to do it. I was gatekeeping it for myself, right? And I don't think anybody would have done it, but I wasn't taking that risk. I was like, nope, that's for me. I haven't done it yet. I'm going to go there and I am going to get it done, but it's not for today. This is for like, we're going to go to other spots with this group of people who are all good,
It's very skater of you.
Yeah. I had a vision for what I wanted to do and I was going to protect that. But like, I mean, I went there with other people at times. And honestly, if you're tall, it makes it so that it's first of all way less risky of an ascent, but second of all, it's way less cool. It looks dumb because you could just like reach
you're not as dynamic.
You could do it very slowly.
Static version.
You could do a static
version if you're tall enough.
Yeah. But for me, it like definitely it's like there's no way for me to do this without like full dynamic reach. And fully exposed. But yeah, I was gatekeeping it. I was like, I'm not going to show other people this that I think would do it. But to be fair, I don't actually think they would because it's quite scary. But and it would be like, and it's kind of a specialized thing. But anyway, I ended up getting it done, and now I don't care if anybody goes back and does it. I've actually brought people there now since I've done it, and I'm like, I'll do like the one level and be like, this is crazy. I would never do this again. It's actually crazy, like to like think about something that's like it's still like physically pretty easy still, but it's like psychologically, there's no way I would even touch it again, like at the higher levels.
Yeah, it's funny. We have certain visions for moves that when people from not Vancouver come that are like world class, we'll take them to and be like, so like a decade ago, people thought this was possible, but no one here is good enough. Do you want to take a look? Right? That's so much of a thing. The only thing that really stands out to me is actually like the PC cat that I did.
Yeah.
And I think Seth posted Seth Moon from youngster from Vancouver. He's looking at eventually doing, and I remember like no one there's a bigger version too. Like and I think he should do the bigger one, but there's a bigger version or a spot where you can do it across like the same vicinity anyways, where you can also do a cat leap or even like a running stride pre. And neither of those have been hit, right? But I just think that
you're talking about the law courts one.
Yeah. But it still goes to the Pacific Center. It's still part of the same infrastructure. But I just never took athletes there. The only person I took to look at the cat leap with me was Daryl Stingley.
Yeah.
And we were talking about like how I would do it. And I think like it's a type of jump where he certainly could do if we were like in a comp and that was one of the challenges, he would do it, but it's not something that he would like want to do or feel as like a need, like, I need to go like jump this gap.
I think one unspoken rule though, just using the example of the cat.
Yeah.
It would be weird for somebody to go with you there knowing that you wanted to do it for your video to be like, cool, I'm going to do it right now in front of you. And make it less special when you do unlock it,
I went there with Nathan, and the intention was we were both going to do it. And there was I remember like one of the sessions, there was a moment where like he was standing on it like ready to go, and then he like shook his head. No, like we both kind of like, as soon as you start doing stuff like that, I know Ollie, who like his ankle hasn't been in condition where he could do something like that, but same thing. He was like,
he was interested.
When I'm better, I'll do it. Yeah. And so like I had those two guys, and that was somewhat helpful is having, training partners to work up to a challenge with you. And there was a point where like Nathan was practicing cat leaps with me too. I just think I'm a little bit ahead of him on that particular skill. But it was funny because there was that one session where he had went with me, and when he said like, oh, I think I can do it right now. And I was like encouraging, but part of me was like,
don't do it.
Don't do it. It's just like, there is something special in parkour sometimes to being first. And I don't know how many, like I'm not afraid, I guess, to admit that sometimes it does feel good to be first, but also like you have to, I remember, so I'll say at one time, Callum Powell on one of his Callum tips, it was something along the lines of like, you're not going to be first or you're not going to be the best, because like he said Tim Champion's out there somewhere, and like he could do the thing that you're thinking is special, and that's the reality is like, and particularly for me now, and at least in the last like over a decade or so, is like realizing like, there's certainly athletes out there that would just like chuckle at this thing that is like the peak of my ability, and so like there's no reason to be super attached to it, as cool as it was. And if anything, that just gives more motivation to do it quickly.
I disagree. I mean, well, yeah, I agree.
I would say do it quickly, because like these are challenges. Like if I'm putting something off for so long, and I think it's why it feels like okay when someone like Tim Champion shows up and be like, hey, do you want to go check out this scary gap that people have talked about doing this thing on, but no one's done it? And, you could be the one, because, it's like, it's been years and people have had their chance. And if they're still feeling special about it, then, they should have done it by now.
Yeah. That's fair. But it's like, I guess the way I think about it is part of parkour is the discovery and the consideration. Like, sure, other people may have considered doing the cat, but you're the only one who's actually like, I am going to do this.
What if I didn't though? But the thing is,
then it would have been real lame.
Yeah, but the thing too is like how long am I allowed to say because again, you talk about like gatekeeping. Like, am I gatekeeping it by letting it know? Yeah, but
you were actively filming the project and you were working up to it and literally practicing the skill in the gym, and you were going there with Mateo to film it, and you were going there with other people just to like be supportive of you, like to achieve it. And so, like at a certain point, if you weren't gonna do it, you would have been like, I'm not doing it, and like stopped like all of the activities around working up to it.
Yeah.
But because you were still in it, whether that takes a year, takes 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, whatever, if you were still actively working up to it, you should like, you have every right to like gatekeep it, in my opinion. If somebody goes there on their own and is like, I found this and I want to do it and I'm going to do it, then it's like, cool, like you're SOL, like you put it off for too long. But because it's like a challenge that you spotted, you were actively working up to, if other people know of it, it would be kind of a dick move to do it first.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, it's the same thing with the ascent, is like, I made it aware to people. I was like, this is a dream challenge of mine. I don't really think there was like a risk of somebody doing it before me, but I wasn't gonna take the risk by like bringing more people to it and be like, hey, look at this. I want to do this one day. Maybe you do it first, you know? Like, I wasn't gonna do that. Because it was like dream challenge. I discovered the spot, quote unquote. And I made it a goal of mine to actually achieve. And I put the work in, and it took 4 years, but I got it done, you know, like it took a long time to will myself to do it. But yeah, like, and I see this even at like, even just regular casual jams. If somebody is like looking at a jump or a challenge or whatever it is, and they are considering doing it and nobody else has done it yet, it would be weird for me to go and do it before them. Unless there's like a fun, like collaborative environment there, or even like a competitive environment that we've created. Then it's like, well, maybe I will do it first. I'm going to do it before you. And then, no, I'm going to do it. You know, that could be fun. But if there's like you're clearly working on something and wanting to break it, I'm not going to go and do it before you, because it feels like that's an unspoken rule. We should allow people to work through the process, because actually it makes it easier when you see somebody else do it.
Yeah.
And in some ways that's beneficial, but sometimes you don't want that. You don't want to make it easier on yourself. You want to be able to work through it on your own without the additional information of seeing somebody else do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, I think about how many reps I see someone do before I'm like, I'm going to go try this with them. Because that's the idea. Is like, I'm going to go try, that looks like something within my realm of things I could do and interests, and I'll probably also have a hard time doing it, so I'm going to go try it with them. But it's like, there's a certain amount of reps where I'm like, I don't want to go over there and start this thing that they're into. It's funny, I think back in the day, I used to, when I went to jams, or went out for group sessions, it was much more common for me to be working through a challenge with not just one person, but like multiple people.
Right.
And I find that happens like pretty much not at all now.
Yeah.
Like we like you and I, like sure, we have different skill sets, but there's also like a lot of, like if we drew like a Venn diagram, like there's also a lot of crossover. Yeah. And so it's very likely that we could be interested in doing the same kinds of challenges, but it happens like so rarely.
It's true.
If we go out and like train together, it's more
I think part of it though is there's sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think part of it's like a culture of wanting to do the unique things, right? Is like, oh, well, he's already claimed that. Yeah. So I'm going to try to find my own unique thing to do. And that's one of the things I love about parkour is like just find like being able to massage the spot and find the thing that I could do.
Yeah.
That is the intersection of interesting and challenging. And once when I find that, it's like the perfect challenge, right? So it's the perfect thing to do. But yeah, it is true. But I also think that you and I are often drawn to different things.
Yeah, I'm. It's tough, and I'm trying to think of like a scenario where like that, where we did actually like share in doing the jump. I think the only like most recent one is like 2020.
2020. You got to go all the way back to 2020.
Yeah, I'm
during
just thinking.
The pandemic.
There was at the Vancouver School Board building that the recent post we were just talking about. Here, we'll go full circle back to that. Yeah. There was like a running stride up that we both did. And then there was also a concrete down that we both did. And that was a fun session because it was like we were doing the same challenges, and it was I can't remember who did which one first, but like, we both everyone accomplished them, but there was like an order and then like a period of waiting and encouraging for the next person to get the challenge.
But neither of those challenges were like particularly difficult, I guess, or like challenging. They were just the challenges at the spot. So it's like, I don't know.
They took some attempts and some, I don't know, you might be, they're both.
No, they took attempts. They took attempts. It wasn't like one shot, but it wasn't like, like I don't recall them being like, oh, I'm stoked that like I finally got this challenge. We were like, I was really excited about getting this challenge. It was more just like we were out training and it was like, oh, here's this concrete, like let's try to sesh it, but that's not. So Bonzer. Do you remember we were Bonzer? Yeah. We did the underbar to running
it's also
jump.
2020.
I know. It's because when you said the pandemic, that was where my mind went. And then we both did. And so you did the underbar to running jump, and I did the dive through to running jump, which was a different take on essentially the same challenge.
Yeah.
But there was also the climbs. Or like the ascent that we both did, but also slightly different.
Yeah. And I think that's actually the case with what I was referring to as well. I think there was a different add-ons to each that occurred. Yeah. Which is usually like, again, if you're...
Not with the concrete though.
I think with like the jump strap, I can't remember what I did, but I remember there was something after.
There's like a bike rack.
Yep.
That we ended
We're getting really visual on this non-visual thing.
You had to be there.
But I think actually that what's kind of making sense to me more now is I'm much more likely to jump into a challenge that you're working on if I see something that I also want to do with it, which could also feel shitty for the person. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'm gonna add on or one up this thing that you're doing, because there could be the case that like the other person, in this case maybe you, wouldn't do or can't do the additional thing, which is also okay, I guess. It's just it is what it is.
Yeah. But sometimes that's what when parkour is collaborative. I think that's like when it's most fun.
Yeah.
When you build off of people's ideas and you're like, maybe you go into it like, hey, I found this jump, and it's like, hey, what if we jumped from here instead? And it's like, whoa, what if we added this onto it? Or like, oh, you could do that. Well, I actually can do this, and it kind of diverges, but it's still a collaborative like experience.
Yeah, we're both like in the same like universe.
in
that sort of way. Whereas if we're both at the sesh, or we're both out for a sesh, and I'm doing something over here and you're doing something over here, we're both kind of alone, and we can shout out at each other like encouragement, but we're still kind of alone on the challenge.
Yeah. But there's also like I can't figure this out, and it's like, well, what if you did it like this instead? And it's like there's still a potential for collaboration.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
No beef.
Yeah. Maybe one day.
Maybe one day we'll have some proper beefs in parkour.
Yeah.
See, is that a goal? Is that a goal for us to have as a culture?
Well,
does that mean we made it?
So the positives of beef. This is gonna be a weird one because someone just got shot in the Kendrick Lamar Drake beef. However, in Kendrick Lamar's case, it really boosted him.
Yeah.
I think more because Kendrick is well, talking about the big three, or it's just Big Me, but he's superstar and like one of the all-time greats in hip hop. But there's also a lot of people that don't really know him that well,
he's
and probably have heard a track.
Super mainstream.
Yeah, like he is, but he also isn't. Like
Drake is super mainstream.
Drake is much more infused in pop,
right,
and in pop culture. Yeah. So I think that someone had done an analysis where they're like, oh, this beef just really what it did is it boosts as an advertisement for Kendrick Lamar's last album, Mr. Morale.
Right.
Where he talks about his personal life and struggles a lot. And so it kind of like makes people want to revisit or listen to that album. But I do think that a lot of times big rivalries end up boosting the participants in the rivalry.
Yeah.
And so if that does happen in parkour, I think it could actually be really big for the sport.
But it's helpful. It's helpful if one of the people are like very well known.
Yeah.
Like in the case of Drake, is like very like everyone knows who Drake is.
Yeah.
Whereas like a lot of people in a culture know who Kendrick is, but now everyone knows who Kendrick is because he took on Drake. But so what you're saying is we need to attack Dom.
Yeah, we're Tim Champion.
Yeah, he's
like someone because this is a thing that happens in fight sports as well. Like in UFC, you could have a big fight coming out for a title, but if there's not like a rivalry for the title, the mainstream audience doesn't really get into it, right? Whereas if
which
you
is
have
why Conor was so successful because he was a great promoter because he started beef.
Yeah, if the shit talking happens, and sometimes it can get out of hand, but it really can add to the amount of eyeballs on the fight. And so if you have a bunch of casual parkour fans who are kind of aware of who Tim Champion is, but then you have like some young up and comer that just it would be kind of weird. I don't know. It would be tough to do in this culture that we're in. But if you can imagine someone publicly like calling them out that like they're gonna beat them like at SPL3, then I don't know. I think that would potentially bring more eyeballs, particularly if there's a response from if both parties are engaging.
Okay,
right?
so Kalen and Ellis.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Kalen, I don't know if you remember, but Kalen said he was like doing a thing and he was like, I'm gonna beat Ellis Torhall or something like that. And it's like, oh, interesting. Like he's got this like competitive spirit to him. And I think it's done in jest, but it's still like this, like he's almost starting this like rivalry.
Yeah. So I think what would happen is initially I could see people like Callum Powell, like people of influence, finding it very cringe.
Yeah.
And talking about how cringe this person's being. If you have someone like Kalen Chan coming out and trying to shit talk or even make jokes, even just it not really selling. However, I think if that person is persistent, and owns the cringe, and then gets a response from the person that they're trying to bait into the rivalry, then I think we have something.
Love it. Something to chew on as we lead up into SPL3. Okay, well, I think we need to end it there.
Yeah.
Please like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening to Spotify, follow us on there. If you prefer to chew on your podcasts on that platform. And if you haven't subscribed already to YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and you'll be subscribed to our content on YouTube because we have a new channel. That's it. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.